You know, it's been said over and over that unfortunately all good things must come to an end. And it seemed that only a couple of months ago, a certain car company gave me the impression that it was going to be the last time ever that I was going to drive one of my favorite cars of all time. Well, now that same company seems to think that I deserve one last dance. What's happening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another car review here on the driveway, where this week it is even more of a bittersweet moment than I thought it was going to be. You see, only a couple of months ago, as I'm sure many of you know, I got the chance to drive a 2022 Toyota Avalon Touring, but that one was the V6 with every option you could think of. But Toyota said, you know what, you love this car so much, why don't you have one more last chance with it? So instead of a big thirsty 6-cylinder, this is the Avalon Hybrid, specifically a fully loaded, completely tricked out limited model in almost an exact spec that I personally would have should I ever have had the opportunity to get one of these. Now, speaking of, unfortunately, if you manage to get one of these, you know they're not necessarily cheap. This car, fully loaded as it sits, it's right around the $47,000, $48,000 mark. So definitely not cheap, but nor is it the most pricey one on the market. And it's definitely a bargain when you consider that its sibling, the Lexus ES, costs considerably more than the one we're sitting in right now. But does the driving experience really feel like that of a Lexus, even though it doesn't wear the badge? Well, let's hit the road and let's find out. You know, guys, it really just feels like it was only yesterday that I sent back that V6 touring version of this car in that beautiful deep red. And I thought, you know, that's it. And what a way to send it off. You know, 300 horsepower, V6, premium sedan that in many eyes is a total sleeper. But then when I got the call that this thing was showing up, you better believe there was more than a few tears welling up, because again, it's one of my favorite cars that I've ever gotten to know. And you may be thinking, well, how can you get so excited about just a Toyota sedan? You know, wouldn't a Lexus stir up a little more emotion? Well, yeah, it would, but that's only because I know what badge I'm driving. This, it is just so understated. And believe it or not, just several months ago, when I was actually, you know, more in the market for a vehicle, I honestly was this close to pushing the order button on one of these. The only thing holding me back was I didn't really have the money for it. So to know that I'm still able to sample this for one final time, well, it's really going to pay dividends in the end. All right, so enough with the mushy stuff here. The question is, why do I love this car so much? And why specifically do I love the hybrid version more than I love the V6 version? Well, quite frankly, it's not just the obvious fact that gas prices are spiking, and even though I've seen them dip just a little bit recently, it's the fact that I don't always feel like I need 300 horsepower to get me where I need to go. Sometimes it just is so nice to sit back, turn on your heated or ventilated seat, depending on what your mood is, and just cruise. And that is what this car's built to do. Yeah, the fuel economy is pretty decent, 43 in the city, 44 on the highway, but it only makes 215 total system horsepower. So, I mean, you're not going to get anywhere in a hurry, especially knowing that there's also a CVT under there, which that's probably the only gripe I have with the performance of this thing is, you know, CVTs, yeah, they're great on gas, but power-wise, you're not going to get anywhere in a hurry. Now there is a sport button down here, which is kind of nice, and it does kind of sharpen things up a little bit. It kind of makes the car a little more lively, but if you push the sport button, you're kind of missing the point of the hybrid. No, I'm not saying you're going to get worse gas mileage, because it's kind of obvious, but I'm talking about the fact that if you're expecting this to be a real driver's car when you put it in sport mode, again, that's not the point of the hybrid. It's supposed to be relaxed, quiet, comfortable. You know, it's supposed to feel more upscale than just an average Toyota sedan. And that's what this car really does. And quite frankly, that's why I fell in love with it. And you know, one thing that's become blatantly obvious to me, and I've kind of sort of been putting it out of my mind, is why would people buy an Avalon when for a little bit less money you can buy a fully loaded Camry? Well, I'll tell you why. Because some people don't want to throw their keys on the table and say, I drive a Toyota Camry. Could you imagine the conversation, especially, you know, like back in the 1990s when this car was first coming into its infancy? You throw the keys on the table and you say, I drive a Toyota Avalon. I don't know, it just has a little bit, it rolls off the tongue a little bit better, doesn't it? You say Camry, and you just think, I drive a rental car. Or, you know, that's maybe what your friends might think. But for me, you know, I've grown up around these things ever since they first came around. I've known people who have had these and have continued to buy them over and over again. And just like me, they share that same kind of somber mood to hear that this car is going away as of this year. You know, I'm really not gonna lie, as a car guy, yeah, we do get emotional about seeing the demise of certain vehicles, and again, you guys might be thinking that I'm absolutely nuts for even thinking about shedding a tear over the demise of the Avalon, but you guys have to understand, cars, like humans, sort of have emotions, and this one's been speaking to me a lot. And well, I feel like I made a mistake not ordering one. Sometimes you just gotta suck it up, and instead of settling for something, you gotta get what you want. And I'm just really sad that I didn't actually pull the trigger on one of these, because I mean, the driving experience is just, it's this much closer to the Lexus brand than you could ever imagine. The seats are insanely comfortable, leather bound. I've got leather and wood and everything all over this car. The ride is just as comfortable as you could want it. And you know, over rougher surfaces, you will get a bit of cabin noise, and with a 4-cylinder engine, you might get a little buzz from it every once in a while. But mainly, I just let this car sit in its most economic mode. I'm sitting here at 50 miles an hour, and you just sit back and drive. It's really what you want with a car like this. And for me, that's the best thing I could ever ask for in a car. And you know, even at the end of the day, I know this thing costs almost $50,000 as this one sits here. But in many ways, if this car were still going on to this day, and it hadn't really been priced out of existence by the fact that, again, it's only a little bit more expensive than a fully loaded Camry, well, I would say that Toyota would have made a great move just giving this thing a minor update. They really don't need to do much, or they really didn't need to do much, again, because it's going away. But I don't know, you know, if this car were still around, would you pick this one, or would you just pick a fully loaded Camry and follow the crowd? Well, for me, I'd pay the money and get one of these, hands down. But you know, it's not just the driving that impresses about this car, it's the looks. So let's head back to our favorite little spot and remind ourselves one last time of why I love this car and why some of you love this car so much. Now, if you want to talk about a vehicle of any kind that demonstrates the idea of quietly stating your potential, this is one of those cars. Ever since this new body style came out, I have absolutely fallen head over heels in love with this thing. It is just, I mentioned it before, it's a very elegant vehicle. The styling is not aggressive. It's not really in your face, but to me, it looks way better than its Lexus sibling. Sitting here in the wind chill pearl, again, a very elegant paint color. It's not bright, it's not in your face, and accented with things like the metallic gray on the grille. You've got the blacked out headlight housings for the full LED headlights with the LED high and low beam. You've got the LED daytime running lights, the sequential LED turn signals. We've got air skirts on the outer corners of the bumper here. The grille is a bit large, and I think that's really the only complaint I've had with the styling of this car. But again, finished in a beautiful metallic gray. We've got the advanced park assist on this one with the advanced safety package, which also includes the intelligent clearance sonar. We've also got a 360 camera on this one. So again, you have all the features that you would find on, say, a Lexus ES, but for a fraction of the price tag. Now, one of the biggest shockers for me with the Avalon is to find out that this thing is only 3 inches longer than a Toyota Camry. At just under 196 inches long, it may look like a big car from a distance, but inside, again, it's not much bigger than its younger sibling. Now, forgetting the numbers for a second, one thing that has always grabbed my attention are the wheels. And believe it or not, I love the wheels on this one even more than that V6 Touring we had before. These are 18-inch super chrome finished aluminum alloy wheels. They're wrapped in 235/45 section hand-cooked tires. And I just think, for a car that displays an elegant profile, they're a lot more subtle, but definitely more luxurious looking than the ones we saw previously. Now, for a car that wears such a prestigious name and one that carries a pretty sizable price tag, as I talked about before, there are a couple of little bones I have to pick with Toyota on this car, but they're so minute that I wouldn't even call them a major grievance. Starting with the mirrors. Yes, they're body colored. Yes, they have the turn signals on the outside, and yes, with the cameras underneath, but they are not power folding. On the Lexus ES, which I said cost considerably more, they are power folding. So I was kind of expecting that feature to be included on the Avalon, but they are equipped with blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert. That all does come standard, but also up top, there is no availability of a panoramic roof. Again, that's not really a complaint. I can see why they did that, because the more body structure you have around a car, the safer it's going to be. So in this case, we only have a standard size power tilting and sliding unit. But of course, it would be an absolute crime if Toyota didn't give us the advanced keyless access to go along with everything else that this car has to offer. Now, the key itself is pretty basic. It has the blue highlighted badge for this hybrid model, matching the ones on the car, and it has the Avalon namesake, but I kind of was expecting a little bit better. But again, it's such a minute grievance, I wouldn't even really consider talking about it. But it has all the usual functions: lock, unlock, trunk, panic, and the releasable key blade that comes out of the bottom. And it works like every other smart key you could think of. As you can see, I have the key on me. If I want to unlock it, I just grab the handle. And if I want to lock it, you just touch the ridge on the front edge. And going back to that earlier statement of quietly demonstrating your potential, with as polarizing as the front of this car may be, well, the back seems a little bit more basic, but it's very curvy. It has, as you might say about a beautiful woman, all the right curves in all the right places. Look at these taillights, for example. They may look a little edgy, but you have the LED sequential turn signals, LED brake lights, reverse lights, all the usual stuff. The badging may be a little bit basic with the limited and hybrid badge, but I love how they've spelled out the Avalon name on this brake light bar here, and there's not too much in the way of excess. There's no fake exhaust outlets down there, for one, which I absolutely love. It's all tucked up underneath the rear bumper nice and easily, and we have the rear half of that intuitive park assist that I was talking about earlier. Now, if you're someone like me and you think that a few extra inches of length would give you a substantial amount more cargo volume in a sizable car like this, well, that's where I've been slightly proven wrong. Now, you can open the trunk to this car by either using just the key, or just to the right of the license plate, there is a little touch lever. And once the trunk opens up, the first thing that you see is it does have 60/40 split fold seats, which is always a nicety, because that way you can actually extend the cargo volume. But initially, just behind the rear seats, you're looking at just over 16 cubic feet of cargo volume. And surprisingly, between the hybrid and the V6, there is no difference in trunk space. If you look in the back there, you can see there is a little mat that sticks up right behind the rear seats. But if you're choosing between this and the 6-cylinder model, well, there's no difference difference in cargo volume at all. Now, the cool part is you look underneath, there is a toolkit with your spare tire hidden underneath. So that's always nice to have. But apart from that, it is a little bit more, I guess, mid-size than full size. You know, guys, I thought the last Avalon that we had the best looking interior out of any of them I've ever seen. But for once in my life, I'm actually happy to be proven wrong, because the inside of the hybrid is as close to its Lexus sibling as you could possibly get. Just look at these birch leather seats, this beautiful light gray, the perforations in the middle, they're heated and ventilated for both the front occupants, but even more so, look at that diamond quilting. You get it on the seat bolsters. There's genuine wood on the dash. There's more leather. You've got the quilting over here on the door panel as well. All the technology you can want. Memory seats for the driver's side, a memory steering column with power adjustments, all the options you could want, from the 360 camera, heated steering wheel, auto high beams. I mean, you name it, it has it. And yes, the interior is somewhat familiar. The design of the steering wheel, the infotainment system, stuff like that. Yeah, it's all pretty common Toyota products, but for what it is and for the price tag that you're paying, I don't see why anyone would buy a Lexus when the interior of this feels like a much nicer place to be. Now, as if to prove a point, once you get inside the Avalon's cabin, you realize that you are in something much, much nicer than even this car's price tag would suggest. And yeah, you could probably pick holes in a couple things, but we'll get to that at its appropriate time. But again, I'm surprised there's not an L badge staring me back in the face off of that steering wheel. But all the technology is as up to date as you could want. The Toyota Safety Sense 2.5 with the adaptive radar cruise, the distance sensor, lane keep assist, lane departure, your radio controls with hands-free Bluetooth and voice recognition, and even back to that aero pad that controls the 7-inch thin film transistor display up there in the gauge cluster. Again, it just feels so much more expensive than its price tag would suggest. And for that, you really cannot fault spending some time inside of this car. And even as I say, the technology in here is as up-to-date as you could want. There is one area of this car that seems to be the biggest gripe out of this entire vehicle for me, and that is the infotainment system. No, it's not the fact that the screen is only 9 inches in size. I can deal with that. It's not that big of a deal. I don't need a screen that's over a foot from corner to corner like the Lexus ES. But things like the dynamic navigation system, it's just so dated looking. You have Android Auto, Apple CarPlay in here with things like Google Maps, Waze, Apple Maps, you name it. And those are so much easier to use. And crucially, unlike this system, they do update with your phone rather than the car, thus saving you on some maintenance costs. But if you want to go into the menu, for example, destination, audio, phone, the Entune app suite, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay in the projection setting, even down to the climate functions, which again, I don't know why they put it in the screen. It's all right here anyway, and all much easier to read and work with compared to something within the touchscreen itself. The backup camera with the 360 monitor, I love that. You can interchange the camera settings, how wide you want it. You can have the 360 as a split screen. I mean, it all works so much better, and I absolutely love this system overall. So while the screen may not be the biggest in size and it may not have the most up-to-date things like navigation and whatnot, you can't really fault Toyota for putting that in there. And of course, one thing I cannot fault Toyota for at all is putting a solid sound system in this car. Standard on the Limited is a 14-speaker JBL premium audio system. And I'm gonna tell you guys, when you've got a high quality song with some serious bass in it, this system is nothing short of amazing. Now, aside from a heck of a stereo and a screen that could use an update, but we kind of look past that a little bit, the Avalon is a little bit of a magician at the same time, because down in this little cubby, you may think there's nothing there, right? But there's this little lip at the front edge of what is actually a lid. You push it back, and down inside you find a standard wireless charger. Now, one thing I must warn people about, if you have a solid size case on your phone, that wireless charger will not only heat up your phone very, very quickly, but at the same time, it'll only charge it for about 15 to 20 seconds before it gets tired and stops charging your phone altogether. Of course, one other big thing you have to note with the Avalon is that even though it's only 3 inches longer than a Camry, it seems to offer a much more sizable amount of space, especially when you get into the back seats. Now, the back seats themselves are just gorgeous. They're draped in the same leather. You don't find any sort of difference between the front seats and the back. You even have some nice little creature comforts, such as an armrest with a nice little bit of gloss black. You've got a nice little phone holder in here with a couple of cup holders in it, and it just seems to offer so much more room. Now, again, I'm sitting behind myself and I'm over 6 feet tall, and sitting back here, I've actually still got a pretty sizable amount of space between my knees and the back of the seat. Couple that with the fact we've got 2 USB chargers here. You've got a regular style one on the left, you got a USB-C on the right, so of course that deals with both parties these days, and you have heated rear seats. Now, unfortunately, if you're riding in the middle, well, you're SOL on that one, but if you're on the outside and perhaps you get a little bit chilly back here, at least you can introduce a little bit of heat to the back as well. But unfortunately, guys, it's time to pull the curtain closed on our review and drive today of the 2022 Toyota Avalon Hybrid. You know, if there was ever a vehicle that isn't a hypercar or a supercar or doesn't wear some kind of high-end prestigious badge that I could officially give a standing ovation for, this is one of them. You guys heard me getting all mushy about it and all sentimental, even though I don't own this thing. But you got to understand, like I said, having grown up around these and knowing it's been around for almost 3 decades, I would say she's had a good run, but it's finally time to put her to bed. But anyways, guys, if you enjoyed this review, or perhaps you learned something about the Avalon again today, please give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button down below, because trust me, I always appreciate the support, and again, it's beneficiary for the both of us in the end of it. At the end of the day, though, I have to give my thanks right back to Toyota USA for giving us one last opportunity to experience the Avalon in all of its glory. But at the end of it, guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. I will see y'all next time. Take care, everybody. Stay safe.